Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory, which is presented by Fox One. I am Jesse Friedman alongside the one and only Jack Sommers. Jack, how are you on this fine Wednesday evening as we record this episode?
Oh, it's been a baseball-filled day. I had a lot of fun watching all the playoff action, 4 games in one day. I think today is the last day that they're going to have 4 games in one day, and so I enjoyed that because I can't get enough of baseball.
Yeah, the Phillies, as we record, are holding on to an 8-1 lead over the Los Angeles Dodgers in the eighth inning of that game. We'll see if that holds. Maybe the
Mhm.
Phillies are not done just yet in that NLDS series. Of course, we saw the Toronto Blue Jays wrap things up in their series against the Yankees earlier today. We'll revisit the whole MLB postseason picture later on in the episode. But Jack, in this edition of Snakes Territory, our main focus is the bullpen, which of course, needless to say, has been a bit of a problem for the Diamondbacks this season, last season, pretty much every season before that. It feels like it's been a persistent issue in this organization for a long time. And we know, Jack, that bullpen is not going to be the team's only priority this offseason. Starting pitching certainly is an area of focus as well. But bullpen certainly has to be near the top of the list for this team.
Yeah, during his post at end of season press conference, Mike Hazen talked about these priorities. We've mentioned this before, and he used the phrase, well, starting pitching is number one, aside from bullpen. Depends on how you want to interpret that. In other words, out after bullpen, starting pitching is number one. I don't think that's what he actually meant to say, but that's the way it kind of sounded. But the bottom line is they certainly need um, starting pitching. And I asked Mike directly, do you feel like you need to go get a closer? Do you need to add a closer? And his answer was kind of like a begrudging probably. And then he went on to say, we've been at our best out of the bullpen when we've had a closer. In the past, he's kind of ironically commented, well, Torrey prefers to have a closer. That age old uh, committee versus closer argument is never going away. It's just a core belief of theirs that it doesn't necessarily have to be a closer. And personally, I don't agree with that. I think that they need a closer. I think they've definitely been better when they have one. And as much as I've been into sabermetrics and analysis and analytics, I'm old school when it comes to the closer mentality. It's the last guy, it's the last line of defense. There's something about that guy being able to get those last 3 outs. And I've learned that over the years. I mean, had it beaten into me being a Diamondbacks fan and coverer and beat writer. Um, they need a closer. Now, Mike had said how I would define going after, a closer is a little bit of a gray area compared to the way you might perceive it. But I'm just here to call turkey and say, hey, Mike, you need a closer. There's 8 different guys on the market, free agents, that you can pick from. We're going to be talking about a lot of them today. Maybe there's somebody you could go out and trade, but Mike Hazen needs to get a closer on this team. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Who are those potential options? And Jesse's going to help us work through who are the better options because I want to write an article about this and I'm not there yet.
I do have some opinions to share. We'll break down some specific names later. Just sticking on that topic though of do the Diamondbacks need one defined closer? I'm with you in saying that ultimately I think they do. I will say just to play devil's advocate and maybe in Mike's defense to a certain extent, it's easy to kind of roll our eyes when we hear Mike talk about like, yeah, we probably need a closer but he's not quite as definitive about it as maybe you'd like. I think the D-backs have gotten themselves into trouble in some years with closers that frankly just weren't really cut out for the job. And you can lose yourself a lot of games when you have a defined closer who is not doing his job. In that case, I think it actually is better, you could argue, to have a committee situation where if one person is not doing the job, then you're able to pivot off that player more quickly as opposed to what we've seen at times with a Greg Holland or a Brad Boxberger, there have been some not great closing situations in this organization during Mike Hazen's tenure. And I think in those years, you could argue you'd rather have not had a defined closer to begin with than stick with those types of guys as long as the D backs did.
My issue there is he's never really put the resources into getting a top flight closer.
Yeah,
Okay,
fair.
it's always been, the weak sister of their priority list and where they're willing to allocate resources. And my argument is very simply, you're talking about a team that you want to play good defense, you want to play tight ball games. You you tried the route where you went and got a bunch of slug and you scored a ton of runs, but when it came to the close games, you blew a bunch of them. Now you want to turn it around and say, well, no, we're going to control this and make up the run differential by playing better defense. Well, if you want to play a pitching and defense oriented game, you have to have a really good 1-run game record. You have to be able to close games out. You cannot take chances of not putting up a good 1-run record if you're going to have a good season. Now, look, we all know 1-run games are a coin flip, but the bottom line is generally teams that have a really good, strong closer do better in 1-run games if you have a good bullpen. So, look, if this is the kind of game that you want to play, if this is the kind of team you want on the field, a defense-oriented team, then you better get a good closer and you better win those close games and you better stop blowing leads. So I think the argument here is, what percentage of your resources, financial resources, are you willing to put into a closer? And my argument is it's time to stop messing around and put that money down.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I understand the trepidation that some people might have with that because, I mean, you look at some of the highest paid relievers this past offseason, it's not exactly a great list, Jack. I mean, the Dodgers got bit by this big time. I mean, Tanner Scott, they gave north of 70 million if I'm remembering correctly, and he's just been pretty terrible this season. Kirby Yates is another bigger name guy that they signed who has not been productive. Blake Trinan, they gave a decent sized contract. There are other teams who have signed bigger name relievers as well. So the track record here, I don't think either of us are saying that you're guaranteed to hit a home
For sure.
run if you go out there and you spend on one of these guys. But I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with it. I think that at a certain point, when you've done the same thing over and over and over again and it hasn't worked, maybe you have to change your strategy. And it feels like the D backs are at that point now with their bullpen situation. That, of course, leads into a conversation about how much money do the Diamondbacks have to spend this offseason. And I know you made this handy chart here that shows kind of their current payroll situation entering the offseason.
Yeah, so we've gone over this before around the trade deadline, but right now on the books, they have guaranteed contracts, players under contract for about 103 million, 102.8 is what I come up with. The arbitration number, that's arbitration eligible players, there's quite a long list of them, adds up to 26 million at MLB Trade Rumors. I originally had 29 million there, so that's about 3 million lower. If anyone has a really sharp memory, you'll remember that my total number was up closer to about 145 million before. Now we add pre-arb players, which comes out to about 9 million for 11 pre-arbitration players that are going to be needed to fill out roster spots at the bare minimum. Doesn't mean that all of those remaining roster spots will be filled by pre-arb players, but that's the least you'll spend. And then the other is injury replacements and the balance of the 40-man roster. That's 5 million. So the total comes out to 142.8 million, or we'll just say 143. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the team, of course, has made it clear that they're cutting payroll. The question is cutting from what? That's a big question mark out there. Various public online sources show that their payroll last year going into the season was about 188 million. The Diamondbacks always maintained it was a little bit higher than that, a few million into the 190s. And that we know that they saved approximately $17 million at the trade deadline when they sold off all those players, plus dumped some of Jordan Montgomery's money as well. So, roughly their actual spend on player salary was probably in the 170, 175 range last year when it was all said and done, but their opening day payroll was about 190. So how much do they have to spend? Maybe it's 30, maybe it's 40. I don't think it's higher than 40.
Mm.
Another point to keep in mind is sometimes they get a little funny and squirrely when they talk about the numbers. I heard Ken Kendrick mention 220 million the other day on the radio. Oh, well, we'll be spending less than that. That number is a competitive balance tax number. And a competitive balance tax number isn't the actual amount of outflow of cash in a given year. That uses the average annual. And then it also does add in things like player benefits, for insurances. It includes 1.7 million per team for the incentive bonus pool, things like that. But in order to be able to compare apples to apples, we just want to add up the players totals. Okay, so that's how I got to my numbers.
30 or 40 million to spend. I mean, if you're thinking about trying to sign a top flight closer, I mean, they could take a decent chunk of that just
Yes.
just by themselves, and then you still have two starting pitcher slots to fill theoretically, along with a number of other areas on the roster. It might be tricky to fit all the pieces together if, in fact, the D-backs do have somewhere in that 30 to $40 million range to work with this offseason. I guess in terms of, did you want to add something to that, Jack, before we dive
Well,
into
I
some
just
names
want to
here?
go back to our discussion from last episode. We talked a lot about Mike Hazen being aggressive with trades.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've thought about these numbers, how you could put it together. Maybe you're spending $15 million to bring Merrill Kelly back, and you're investing another 15 million into a closer, and another 5 million to bring back James McCann. There's your 35 million, and all your other holes got to be filled by trades. I mean, that's just one example of how that could work. I think that another way is if they piecemeal out some of their free agent dollars and they fill the starting pitching spots by trade, which we talked about that possibility. Either way, they're going to be making trades. I think trades are going to be a big piece of this, clearly, because they have 30 to $40 million at most to spend in the free agent market. And here I am demanding that they drop probably close to 15 of it into a closer if that's what it takes. So be it. But this is what they need to do. They need to commit to getting a closer, and it's going to cost them.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and jump into some actual names. I know you've done some digging on this, Jack, in terms of who is out there, and here are some stats of some of the more recognizable closer names that are out there in free agency this offseason. We have Emilio Pagan, who's the closer for the Cincinnati Reds this past season. Robert Suarez of the Padres, Raisel Iglesias of the Braves, Kyle Finnegan with Detroit, and then Ryan Helsley, who was moved at the deadline to the Mets. And then, of course, Devin Williams, who was acquired over the offseason by the New York Yankees. Of course, Jack, Helsley and Devin Williams, both of those guys finished the year with an ERA plus under 100. It was not a good season at all for either of them. But on the other side of things, Emilio Pagan actually had the best season of all of these guys by ERA plus.
Right. There's two names that are missing from this list. Our astute listeners and watchers will know Edwin Diaz and also Kenley Jansen. The reason they're not there is because even I'll admit that Edwin Diaz is simply outside the financial range.
Yeah.
He's going to get $20 million. He's the best of all of them, and he's going to get paid like it. I think he had a 1.38 ERA. He's just lights out 2.28 FIP. I mean, the guy's a beast,
Yeah.
and he's going to get paid like it. And the Trumpets will not be playing here in Arizona for him. And then Kenley Jansen was 29 of 30 in saves, but he's 37 years old. And even I'm not going to go out there and say, okay, go get 37-year-old Kenley Jansen. I think that, that's really tempting fate to go down that road. So I didn't include those two free agents in this list, and I culled it down to 6.
Yeah, I think Kenley just turned 38 on September
Right.
30th. So yeah, he's definitely getting up there. He had a fantastic season. I mean, a 2.59 ERA, a 0.95 WHIP. But yeah, with the age, you kind of figure you're playing with fire there. Certainly, those sorts of moves have not worked out in recent history for the Diamondbacks. You'd understand their trepidation there. But yeah, I mean, the names on this list, Jack, I don't know if there's I don't think any of these guys is a in their prime one of the best closers in all of baseball. Devin Williams certainly was that after the season he just had with the Yankees, maybe a little bit less so. But Devin Williams does stand out to me on this list because you see a 2.68 FIP there. You see his strikeout rate, which was up over 30%. There are some compelling things with Devin Williams. I think that despite his 4.79 ERA, he is very much a candidate to bounce back next year.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I'd like to mention, Robert Suarez. He's 34 years old, but he's only got like 4 years in the majors, right? He pitched in
Right.
Japan, Mexico. That guy is in his prime. I mean, he's throwing high 90s heat. He's preventing runs. He's got a great FIP. I think it's 2.88 or something. He had 40 saves. He's a great closer. He's a worthy investment. But Devin Williams, and if we're going to look at a couple other charts, there's some things in there that might, maybe the year he had makes him a good buy low candidate. Can we go back to the main list again real quick?
Yeah.
So, Emilio Pagan, I mean, like you mentioned, he had a 2.88 ERA, but his FIP was almost a run higher at 3.72. But he had a successful season. Iglesias had a really good season. I mean, 3.21 ERA, 3.31 FIP, 130 ERA plus. He had 29 saves. I think we'll get to the save percentages. Kyle Finnegan probably is a weaker option on this list. And Ryan Helsley, I mean, heading into last year, Ryan Helsley was considered the premier target. And he was the guy that the D-backs were really looking to get, I think, and weren't able to. And all of a sudden, he kind of fell apart last year. 4.5 ERA, 4.14 FIP. Is there a bounce back in him? I think there may well be. So this list has a combination of guys that are kind of like at the peak of their powers are going to get paid for it. Suarez, Iglesias, Pagan, and then you have like Devin Williams and Ryan Helsley, whose market value has dropped as a result of the seasons they just had, but they're still only 30 years old and they're still striking out double digits per nine.
Well, we have certainly a lot more to get to with this list of closing options. We'll dive deeper, take a look at some other numbers, and talk about who out of all of these guys Jack and I like the most. And we will continue that discussion on the other side of this break here. Well, as I said from the top, this show is brought to you by Fox One. Fox One is now live. Stream all your Fox favorites together in one place, including, of course, all AL playoff games and the World Series. Jack, I know we discussed it a little bit from the top of the episode there. Some of these postseason series are wrapping up, getting close to wrapping up. We have what should be a very fun Game 5 between the Detroit Tigers and the Seattle Mariners shaping up here in a couple of days. That should be a pretty entertaining baseball game.
Yeah, it'd be amazing if Detroit gets all the way through to the ALCS. I mean, after all the hubbub and angst over them blowing their division lead, they get past the Guardians, then they fall behind the Mariners in this series 2-1, and now they're tied up, and now they're in a Game 5 with Tariq Skubal on the mound. So, you know, you can't predict baseball. It's just been a wild up and down season for them. It's really intriguing to see what happens for them next.
Well, that series between the Mariners and the Tigers will conclude on Friday. That's a 5 p.m. Arizona time start. And yeah, from MLB postseason to NFL on Fox to Big Noon Saturdays with Fox One, you get it all live. Start your 7-day free trial today. Offers are subject to change. Go to fox1.com for complete terms and conditions. Fox One streaming now. Well, Jack, we were discussing our preferences here, giving some numbers for some of these guys. Another fun list that you have compiled for us. Some other stats that we can look at is the OPS plus, the opposing OPS plus for each of these pitchers. Obviously, we are used to evaluating pitchers based on run prevention, using ERA and FIP and XFIP and those kinds of things. But I think these numbers are really valuable. What OPS did you hold opposing hitters to? Sometimes you have a guy who posted a pretty good ERA, but opposing hitters actually had a 720 OPS or something like that. It really adds some helpful context to their season, and I think it also kind of opens our eyes a little bit to which of these pitchers was really most dominant this past season.
Correct. So Robert Suarez is right there at the top of the list with a 48 OPS plus against. He only gave up a 536 OPS. The OBP against was 243. I mean, no wonder he had so many saves and so much success because nobody got on base. Same
Yeah.
with Emilio Pagan. Emilio Pagan had a 168 batting average against and 241 OBP against. Now, I leave the BABIP number there. Emilio Pagan only had a 200 BABIP against. So he is a regression candidate. I'd expect both the average and the OBP and the OPS to go up for him. Devin Williams with a 299 BABIP still only gave up a 197 batting average. That's thanks to his 13 strikeouts per nine. So that's 70 OPS plus. Very dominant, where he wasn't hit lucky. Raciel Iglesias, 71, essentially the same as Devin Williams, with a 257 BABIP against and a 259 OBP. So those guys were truly dominant. Kyle Finnegan, surprisingly strong in this category, even though he's listed fifth on this list, a 77 OPS plus against, 631 OPS against. Really good. And his BABIP wasn't abnormally low at 277. Then you have Ryan Helsley bringing up the rear, which is just unfathomable that a guy with his stuff had a 121 OPS plus against, a 784 OPS against, 275 batting average, 347 OBP, 344 BABIP. He was super hittable. I mean,
Yeah.
but probably had some bad luck in there too. And I think sometimes, if you're giving up a lot of hits that you shouldn't be, you think you got to fix and change something. And next thing you know, you should be giving up those hits because the changes you made weren't good. It's easy for us on the outside to look at the BABIP numbers and say, oh, well, that'll regress to the mean. And Ryan Helsley was unlucky with a 344 BABIP against. But, at the same time, when they're playing the game, after a while, if that just keeps happening, it really does get in their heads and they think they got to change and do things differently. And, sometimes those changes don't work out. But Ryan Helsley he's too good and he should not be washed up at this point. I think he's a good buy low candidate as well. I still wouldn't give up on the idea of him.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're really trying to like push your chips in and go get a true bona fide closer that you feel really good about, I mean, is this version of Ryan Helsley all that different from the Brad Boxberger, from the Greg Holland? Like you're kind of banking on a bounce back that I think could happen. I agree with you. I mean, he's still averaged, I think it was 99.3 miles per hour with his four seam fastball compared to 99.6 the year before that. It's not like there's this massive velocity drop off, but the results really were. I mean, you look at some of the underlying metrics with Helsley. I don't think it was all just a bad luck situation for him. His strikeout rate has dropped significantly each of the past two seasons. I'm not so sure how great I would feel if I got Ryan Helsley, Jack. I think he's maybe at the bottom of the list for me. Other numbers that we could look at here. Save percentage, of course, being one of them. Robert Suarez at the top of the list here, 88.9%. He was, I think it's 40 for 45 in save opportunities, which is really impressive. Raisel Iglesias, 85.3%. Emilio Pagan, 84.2. He was 32 for 38. Devin Williams was removed from the closer role, but he was 18 for 22, 81.8%. Really not all that bad when he was in the closer role. And then Kyle Finnegan at 77.4%. And then Ryan Helsley there at the bottom at a 70% save conversion rate.
Right. So I think we can probably draw a line through Helsley and most likely Finnegan as well. If we're going to put our chips into the middle of the pool, we got to get a guy that's been a little bit more reliable than that.
I think that's probably fair. I mean, if you're a fan of the Diamondbacks and you see your team go get Ryan Helsley this offseason, I just think that's a big question mark. Like you just don't maybe it's going to be great, but there's a whole lot of risk involved in a move like that. One of my favorite stats when it comes to evaluating relievers, especially you can just be so volatile, is this one,
Mm.
K minus walk percentage. And here, Jack, Devin Williams is at the top at 25.1%. This is where you take a pitcher's strikeout rate and their walk rate. You get the difference between those two numbers. So, of course, the higher the number, the better. And Devin Williams is really far and away number one on this list.
Yes, and by the way, K minus walk percentage is probably even more predictive of future ERA or correlates better to ERA than even FIP and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a really good number. So I'm with you there, Jesse. That's why we got this chart up here. Yeah, Devin Williams at 25.1 that's a phenomenal number. That's a 35% K rate and a 10% walk rate, essentially. And then you have Suarez and Emilio Pagan and Iglesias, all about the same 21.9, 21.9, and 21.4.
All
So
good.
that's still really good, just not quite to Devin Williams' level. Um, Now, there are people that'll say, yeah, but, ever since he got banged around in the playoffs, Devin Williams hasn't been the same guy. And that was the problem he had in New York. So, there may be concerns on the part of some of whether or not Devin Williams can handle the pressure of being a closer full time. But you know, in pitching in Arizona is not like pitching in New York. So I think that he very well could have a lot of success. But really, any one of the top four that you're looking at here, Williams, Suarez, Pagano, or Iglesias, would be really good options. Kyle Finnegan, 16.2 is just okay, nothing to shout about. And Helsley, his K percentage dropped to 25, and his walk percentage went up to 10. So his K minus walk comes in last on this list at 15.1.
And just to add some context here, the league average K minus walk rate for relief pitchers is 13.5% this year. So Finnegan and Helsley are just a little bit above that at 16.2 and 15.1, respectively. All the other guys on this list are well above that. If you're into the 20s with your K minus walk percentage, that's a really impressive number. So yeah, I think at this point, Jack, we've drawn a line between those top four guys and then Kyle Finnegan and Ryan Helsley. It's not to say that they couldn't have good seasons in 2026. I mean, especially Kyle Finnegan, like, I think you have to tip your hat to a guy who year in and year out has been a pretty darn good closer every single season, at least has been solid in that role. He hasn't had any major blow up years. He was really, really good after the Tigers traded for him at the deadline. But yeah, I think you probably want one of those four guys. You probably want Emilio Pagan, Robert Suarez, Devin Williams, or Raisel Iglesias. And I guess our final numbers that we can look at here, strike percentage, just literally the percentage of your pitches that are strikes. Here we see Devin Williams at the bottom of the list, along with Emilio Pagan, in that 64-65% range. Raisel Iglesias and Robert Suarez are our top two guys, with Helsley and Finnegan in the middle. Yeah, strikes are certainly important, but if you're striking out as many guys as like a Devin Williams is, you can get away with missing the zone a little more often and walking a few more guys.
Yeah, my only concern there is, some of the issues he had in key situations, I think, were because of bouts of wildness and falling behind in counts. And I think that's what made Suarez and Iglesias a little bit more steady. They were better strike throwers, getting
Yeah.
ahead in counts, getting to 0-1, getting to 1-2. Pumping strikes is like the last thing in the world you want is your closer going out there struggling to find the strike zone and going to 3-2 counts on everybody before striking them out. It just drives you crazy. So that's a little bit of a negative on the Devin Williams column there.
Yeah, this is I'm trying to think about which like how I would rank these four guys if we were to just sort of narrow in on Suarez, Williams, Iglesias, and Emilio Pagan. It would be hard for me to put Williams number one because he did just have a 4.79 ERA. But I would probably have Williams up there on my list just because of his track record and the fact that he also had an insane finish to the season. You look at his final 19 games, Jack, Devin Williams had a 2.50 ERA, which is pretty good, but the peripherals were insane. He had 6 walks to 34 strikeouts in 18 innings pitched. That's how he finished the season for the Yankees this year. He looked a whole lot like the Devin Williams of old, which we know can be one of the best relief pitchers in all of baseball. So Williams would be pretty intriguing for me. You figure he might cost a little bit less based on the season he just had. So I think you probably like that as well if you're the D-backs. I'm guessing that Robert Suarez, correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, Robert Suarez probably gets the most money out of these four guys. You think that's fair to say?
Yeah. So, I'm right now as you're talking, I'm looking at Spot Track's numbers. Now, take these with a huge grain of salt. Spot Track's market value, average annual. I sometimes they're spot on, sometimes they miss by a lot. We talked a little bit in our last episode or one before that about Merrill Kelly, and they were using age 33, 34, and 35 pitchers to compare multi-year deals to a 37-year-old Merrill Kelly. That didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. But at the same time, they put a lot of work into this, so it's worth considering the numbers that they have. Suarez market value is listed at 16.8 million. And below him, Ryan Helsley, 13.6. Emilio Pagan, 12.3. And Finnegan, 10 million, 9.97. Rafael Iglesias, 8.8. And then we get down to Devin Williams, 5.75.
Wow, they're projecting Devin Williams to make 5.75 million.
Yeah. So, based on this, Devin Williams for sure is the first guy you look at, but I just find it hard to believe he's not going to clear $6 million. It just
Yeah,
feels low.
he's going to get
Um,
more than that.
Iglesias at 8 or 9 million looks pretty good to me. I think he's been a pretty good closer for a while.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to go up into the bigger numbers, then go all in and get Suarez.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd be really curious to know what it would take to get Suarez. As you said earlier, he's not super young. I mean, this was his age 34 season. Really, all of these guys, I mean, I guess Devin Williams is entering his age 31 season. So he's the youngest out of these four by a wide margin. Emilio Pagan is 34 years old, and then Raisel Iglesias going to be entering his age 36 season. So he's certainly getting up there a little bit. Um, yeah, I think Robert Suarez is the most desirable of the four, but I imagine he's going to cost the most. Maybe you kind of see what that looks like. If it's not him, I think Raisel Iglesias would be really solid. Maybe the fact that he's 36 years old means the price tag is within reason, but you still feel that he could be a pretty good relief pitcher for another couple years. And then Devin Williams, if the price tag is low enough, Jack, that would really intrigue me. I think there's a totally real chance that Devin Williams goes out and has a 1.95 ERA or something like that next year.
Would you pay him 3 years, $30 million?
3 and 30 for Devin Williams.
Right? Because I mean, I think that's what it's going to take. I think it's going to take that
Yeah.
third year, and maybe he goes for less than 10 million a year. I think that they're low on their estimate at Spot Track.
I maybe this seems crazy. I want to know what all of our listeners, viewers think about this. I think I would. I think I would give Devin Williams 3 and 30. I know he just had an ERA of 4.79, but the way that he finished the season and the fact that his underlying numbers were still really good. I mean, his FIP was below 3, which is excellent. The strikeout rate, is it lower than years past? Yes, but it's still in the mid 30s, which is elite, better than anyone else on this list that we're talking about. I still think all the ingredients are there for Devin Williams to be one of the best relievers in baseball. And as you said, as we were talking about off the top, like if you're gonna make an investment into a back end reliever, it's gonna be a risk. It doesn't matter if the guy had a 2.5 ERA last year; it's still a risk. But we see this
Yeah.
happen time and time again. So I'm looking more at the underlying numbers, and with Devin Williams, I see the kind of pitcher that you really want, and he's also younger than anyone else in this group.
This is a lot of fun. By the way, for our listeners, I mean, we came into this without a predetermined conclusion. We decided that we were going to workshop through this together. And, we haven't come to any firm or final conclusions. And we'll be really looking forward to what you all have to say in the comments here or, wherever you interact with us. This is going to be a lot of fun to really chase down and try to nail down what should be the best option for the D-backs. Jesse's just about got me convinced that it should
Yeah,
be
I
Devin
wanted I
Williams.
wanted to pitch the question back to you. Would you give Devin Williams 3 and 30?
Yes, sure. Why not? I mean, if I would try for a little lower, but if that's what it was going to take, I would do it.
Yeah.
I mean, again, look, it's a risk, as you said. We know it's a risk, but you're not going anywhere without a closer. You have no shot without a closer. So you got to roll the dice and hope it works and hope that you're one of the lucky ones that they don't get hurt and they don't fall apart. I mean, that's the risk of but no risk it, no biscuit or whatever. That's stealing from the Cardinals here, but it's true. I mean, look, how are you going to get past the Dodgers again?
Yeah.
The Dodgers are a stronger team now than they were in 2023. And even not talking about like winning the division, but just getting in the postseason and figuring that at some point you're probably going to have to get past them again in the postseason. How are you going to do that? You got to have a really good bullpen. You got no choice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let us know what you think in the comments. Are we crazy for saying we'd give Devin Williams 3 years and 30 million? Side note, I wouldn't be shocked if it wound up taking more than that, just given Devin Williams' track record. We'll see. Maybe it winds up taking less. Let us know what you think in the comments. We always love hearing from you there. But for right now, it is time for our DraftKings Player Spotlight. Well, Jack, for this week's DraftKings Player Spotlight, we are revisiting a familiar face, a familiar name to Diamondbacks fans here in the Valley. Eugenio Suárez has been doing some good things for the Seattle Mariners. His overall numbers are not fantastic in the postseason up to this point, but we did see him get a base hit in the game today for Seattle, as well as hit a home run against Jack Flaherty in the game yesterday.
Yeah, so I pulled him here for a plus 600 to hit a home run. Now, of course, he's facing Tariq Skubal, so that's going to make it a little harder. That's factored into that number. Maybe he comes off the bullpen, but the one thing we know about Gino, when he starts hitting home runs, they generally come close together.
Mm.
And I will not lie, there's a bit of emotion behind this pick because there's nobody I would love to see have success and knock a couple of dingers and help drive his team into the ALCS than Eugenio Suárez. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious how D-backs fans feel about this. Like, are they are people feeling all in on the Mariners, all in on rooting for Suarez and Josh Naylor and some of the other former D-backs that we see in the playoffs right now? Dalton Varsho's had a really good postseason for the Toronto Blue Jays. Or are people a little bit bitter about the way that this 2025 season has gone for the Diamondbacks? I think I would certainly understand either way how people were feeling about that.
For just a note here, I think a lot of Diamondbacks fans probably are rooting for the Mariners because of the Suarez and Naylor connections. Those are two very popular players, and all the feedback I see online is looking for those guys to do well. I started traveling a lot to the Pacific Northwest in the early '80s, and went to a lot of Mariner games when I was living in Asia, and I'd come back to the States and spend a lot of time, fashioning my vacations around when the Mariners were in town so that I could go see them. That's also how I became a Randy Johnson acolyte. um, and so, I was more than thrilled when I decided to move back to Arizona, and got to see Randy Johnson. So there's a connection there for me to the Mariners organization. I've watched a lot of Mariners games over the years. I think they have great fans. I think when you go up to that stadium, and you just see how engaged their fans are. I think they love their teams in the Pacific Northwest, and it's not the same. It's not like I know local fans don't like Seahawks fans very much, but Mariners fans are pretty good baseball fans. So there's a lot to like about that, and a lot to root for. So go Seattle.
Well, there you go. Here's the pick. It's Eugenio Suárez to hit a home run in that finale on Friday with the Detroit Tigers at plus 600. If you have never bet on baseball before, of course, you should go do that over with our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. October baseball is here. The pressure's on. The lights are brighter. And with DraftKings Sportsbook, you're right there in the middle of every moonshot moment. New customers bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your if your bet wins in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Minimum minus 500 odds required. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Well, Jack, our final topic to visit here on this episode of Snakes Territory is that one, Chris Owings has officially announced his retirement from professional baseball. Chris Owings, for those who may not have been aware, including myself, as of about a half an hour ago, Chris Owings was apparently playing in the Dodgers organization in AAA in 2024. He's been bouncing around here for the past few years. And I think it's always fun, Jack, to look back at players like this, players that people had pretty high expectations for when they first entered the big leagues. And, I think with Chris Owings, we can be honest and say he wasn't really able to reach the expectations that I think a lot of people had for him out of the gate. But at the same time, it's really impressive anytime a player is able to stick around in professional baseball as long as Chris Owings did. I think it was 11 seasons when all was said and done. That's something that not many players can say at the end of their careers.
Yep, it's another reminder that even every replacement level player in baseball is better at baseball than anything I'll ever do in my entire life, professionally. I think I'm a pretty good dad and all that stuff, but we're talking about work level and success. I mean, the number of players that have played 10, 11 seasons in the major leagues is extremely small. And to be at that level, even if you weren't a star and you were more or less a replacement level player, you were still a major leaguer. So congratulations to Chris Owings for lasting that long in the majors. It's kind of a little bit of a tale of watch those walk rates and watch those K rates. When he was first coming up, I had a lot of debates with people. He had a hot year for AAA Reno. He hit 330 and looked like he was going to really be something to a lot of guys. And I'm looking at the walk rates, and they're like 3.5%, 4%. I'm like, that's just too low. He came up his first cup of coffee, he hit 291. He even walked 6 times in 61 plate appearances. And so I thought, all right, well, maybe he's figured that out. But as it turned out, his career walk rate was under 6%. It was about 5.5. And so when you hear me harping on walk and strikeout rates for hitters as well, I mean, there's a reason behind it, because it just lowers a guy's ceiling.
Yeah.
When you don't take any walks, you're going to have a lower on base percentage. Even you have to hit for a really high average if you're not taking walks. And there were a couple of years where he hit for decent average, but for the most part, when the hits didn't fall, he had nothing to fall back on, and had some really rough years there mid-career. So, just I hate to use Chris as a cautionary tale while we're celebrating his 11-year career. Once again, congratulations. Chris Owings was a better baseball player than I was a shoe guy. So there you go.
Well, that's big of you to admit, Jack. I mean, that's you're a legend in that space. I mean, it's your Twitter handle, for goodness sakes. Um, I do want to make one quick other point on Chris Owings, which is to say that he played center field for the Diamondbacks in 2016, which
Yeah.
still sort of blows my mind. There was a period of several years, Jack, where the D-backs just did not have a center fielder. I guess it was sort of after AJ Pollock, and then sort of while AJ Pollock was hurt, which he often was. The D-backs just didn't really have a great center field option. And so Ketel Marte spent some time out there. Chris Owings spent some time out there in the years leading up to that. Later, we saw Pavin Smith play center field. Of course, that's when we saw Dalton Varsho get his first look out there as well. It's kind of a revolving door. And yeah, I mean, the fact that Chris Owings just went out and played center field, like he was definitely the type of guy who could just sort of go out there and he was athletic enough to at least make it work, even if it wasn't going to be perfect.
He was a super fast runner and a very high percentage base stealer too. One of the things, had he been able to get on base more, he would have been able to use his wheels more. He had years, 21 stolen bases, 2 caught, things like that. I think 79 and 16 for his career. And during the peak of his Diamondbacks, it was 70 stolen bases and 13 caught. Um, you know, Fortunately, that was with a 291 OBP. If he'd have been able to get on base a little bit more and use those legs, definitely would have helped his value a bit. Super fast. Guy was super fast.
Yeah. Well, as you said, congratulations to Chris Owings on an impressive major league career when all was said and done. As you said, he's better at baseball than either of us will ever be at anything. So there's that. Well, that is everything that we have for this episode of Snakes Territory. We really appreciate all of you being here with us. If you haven't already, be sure to drop a like on this video, subscribe to our channel here on YouTube, and of course, leave us your comments. We want to know what you think of our bullpen conversation earlier. Is 3 years and 30 million crazy for Devin Williams? Let us know in the comments below. You can find us on social media as well. I am at Jesse and Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. And of course, Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks, coming up with all sorts of fun off-season content over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. So be sure to check out his work over there as well. Jack, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
I'm going to be, if I can, we might have some family things going on, but might get to go see David Hageman pitch in the Arizona Fall League on Thursday. So that should be fun.
There you go. Yeah, David Hageman, one of the headliner names representing the Diamondbacks in the fall league here over the next month or so, we highly encourage all of you to get out to a fall league game or two if you haven't already. It really is one of the best kept secrets in baseball as far as seeing baseball in Arizona. It really is a huge perk having the Arizona Fall League right in everybody's backyard there. So we highly encourage you to take advantage of that. And we'll talk some Fall League on the show here sometime soon. Once we get a few more games being played, have some numbers to talk about, we'll definitely break down some observations of that here on the show. Well, thank you again to all of you for being with us on this episode. We really appreciate your time, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.